Hey everyone, Cody Menz here with another video for the upcoming update 1.20.1 in World of Tanks PC. Now, where has Wargaming been essentially since March 31st when they last put out the infamous new crew perk system briefing, and specifically the line that triggered almost the entire player base? Monetization was never part of these goals. Well, anyway, Wargaming now released an update on the upcoming update for on April 19th here. Now, trying to keep a short, don't care to watch the entire video version of this, Wargaming essentially listened to the community, and contrary to all the naysayers that said that voicing your feedback and essentially pushing back as a player against all these changes that they were proposing that was extremely pay to win, or essentially devaluing your current existing content that you've grinded out or paid for or what have you, or boycotting the game like myself called for and a lot of players were doing, they essentially listened. Where screw you naysayers, but getting into what they did. They didn't essentially fix everything I'm concerned about, but they fixed the two biggest things that the community were pointing out. One, they removed the free demounting of improved equipment for bonds, essentially from the WOT Plus subscription that they're going to be pushing into the next update. And that will no longer basically be part of it, which was essentially a huge issue because it would allow WOT Plus members to have bond equipment on every single one of their tanks. Whereas previously, it's very difficult to move it tank to tank to tank. You have to spend those bonds to do that. And people have spent years basically accumulating bond equipment, where it would essentially hurt a lot of players. There's two sides to, the opinions on it, but more or less, a lot of people felt like it was a bad change and Wargaming removed it. Awesome. The second change, Wargaming essentially is canceling the large part of the crew rework. They're no longer going to be revising existing crew skills when it comes to like the actual attributes and stuff that they do, and no longer introducing new crew skills as well. They do leave the door open to potentially doing that in a future update, but for this update, they've decided to basically delay that, pull it out entirely. Now, there are still some changes and some very important ones too. They are still pushing through, and the big one is they're unifying perks and skills into just perks that work from the beginning, essentially. So something like Brothers in Arms or Deadeye, which currently you have to hit 100% for it to start the work or start working. It's now going to start at 1%, and it's going to start working from the get-go. Awesome. That's a very good change that players were requesting, and that's coming in still. The other thing essentially is the major qualification increases for those existing perks that would start at 100%, didn't always get affected by your major qualification and receive additional bonuses essentially from that. So what does that mean? So this is where some good and some bad. So it does basically open up the door. So for those that don't know what major qualification is, and trying to keep this as short and sweet as possible, so take my T110E3 commander here. He has 105% here as his major qualification, and the commander provides bonuses essentially to their crew members, and they have 116%. Previously, say something like Deadeye, where once you have it trained, it just works as it's said. It basically works that way. In the new system, basically every skill is going to work off of, you can train it, and like if your crew is 100%, it works that way. However, now with it taking into account the major qualification, you're going to get a 16% extra bonus above what your skill is, advertised as when you're training your crew, essentially, to where it's going to become even better. Even though they're not tweaking the skills themselves or tweaking and adding new skills in, your skills will get better, the ones that weren't affected by this before. And what this does is, so take my E3 commander here, which he has 5.5, perks here, does not have vents, or event directive or food on the tank. It does have Brothers in Arms though, which is why it's kind of boosted here. But say you move over to my T110E5 commander, which does have food and has a bond vent on it, doesn't have a directive, the major qualification instead of 105% is 123% and 135% for the gunner, driver, and loader. So it does introduce some level of, if you're using food on your tank, if you have that Brothers in Arms crew, and it makes vents better as a piece of equipment, it does change a bit of the existing game and, your tanks and essentially your skills and what equipment and stuff you're going to be using. To where does it make it pay to win? I'd argue it falls into the previous category of where World of Tanks is very basically teetered on, where it's a pay for an advantage, essentially, to where veteran players, with better crews and with bond equipment and, people using food that have a premium account, and say if you add WOT Plus on, they'll definitely benefit from this more than free-to-play players that will struggle to do that for most of their tanks. But it's not as game-breaking as essentially what they were introducing before they removed the skills and the perks, that they were going to do that massive overhaul. Otherwise, they're removing the experience penalties from dead crew members essentially at the end of the battles, adding in a new battle interface to show your perks working within the game, which is awesome, providing better descriptions of perks and their effects within the garage and also in the vehicle characteristics widget. All good changes here, where I'm really glad that Wargaming essentially listened to us. And to kind of close out the too long don't care version of this video, looking at this, and we still have to see whether they do a third common test here. Most likely, I'm assuming the update's going to come out, so probably April 25th to the 26th, so maybe we'll see a short little common test here at the end of this week and the weekend. Very latest, we'll probably, see this the beginning of May, like May 2nd or the 3rd. I don't think they'll go longer, but I think it'll be next week. Great, thank you as players for voicing your feedback and your concerns of Wargaming, and a lot of people not essentially playing the game and voting with your time and wallets to force essentially Wargaming to open their eyes and basically go into straight panic mode and do these changes. Like, thank you as the players, because it essentially, getting into kind of the second half of the video here, going over what's still coming into update 1.20.1, because there's still a crap load of stuff coming here. This kind of moves me back from, like, when this first came out, I was very much considering stopping basically playing the game. After almost 12 years, I was going to essentially quit the game, probably the community contributor program, because that kind of goes along with it if I'm not playing the game anymore. And after now their infamous new crew perk system briefing that they released on March 31st, which this I feel like was the tipping point to where a lot of people were upset with the original 1.20.1 common test article and introduction, but this literally I think pissed people off, and Wargaming essentially dug themselves in a hole they couldn't get out of, which is probably why we haven't heard from them in over 2 weeks now. And they delayed their update, which was supposed to come out yesterday, and literally radio silent, where just like back in Rubicon, this was them getting way ahead of themselves monetization wise. And the players, there is no game without us, the players. They can pump out a game all they want, but if they're making changes and less people are playing and a lot of people are quitting that have played the game for 5-10 plus years and spent however many dollars on the game, there is no game without us. Which is why whenever a company does this, people that were saying like it was futile to boycott or voice your opinion and basically be pissed off because they're going to push it through anyway, screw off, you're wrong. Essentially, though, what is still coming in 1.20.1, and is it going to be a good update? I'm not entirely happy about everything. I'll say that where the changes that they did, they took the two biggest things essentially that a lot of people were you can't do this, essentially we're essentially going to stop playing, more or less. And we don't know exactly what the entire update's going to be here, because this article they released today is mainly just addressing what they're removing. So we'll still have to wait until like the official patch notes or the common test number 3, but we're still getting a lot of stuff. They're doing a recon mission still, essentially random events and dynamic cover. They're going to be testing. I'm not really a fan of this. I feel like it's kind of wasted time to try to add in like dynamic things to maps that are already in the game, to where they're not large maps, to begin with, and the battles really only last like 5 or 6 minutes. So like, do we really need like random events? Like, they're not random, like they're going to be happening within the first few minutes of a battle, because they're over in 5 minutes for the most part. I'd rather them, even if it's just based off of this test, add this to new maps, like larger maps you introduce, build a map around something like a bridge opening or closing or something blowing up. Don't change existing maps that don't need it. It's just all fluff, in my opinion. Rework the crew system, went over what they're doing there. The changes, I'm happy with what they did. Where essentially right now, like, it looks like they're more or less like they're going to update the roadmap, they said, in a future video coming out end of April, probably May here. We'll probably still see the crew skill rework. What I'm assuming that they're going to do, and they mentioned essentially what they're doing. They're going to be removing 50 and 75% trained crew members for the major qualification, allowing a single crew member essentially to work up to 3 tech tree tanks, which will most likely cost gold to train them for the second or third. So it's really just removing this, which is great for free-to-play players and all players, and then adding this in, which will help essentially paid players, because you'll be able to just have one, say, great mega crew and use it on 3 tech tree tanks plus all your premiums. And then also being able to say smash your old crew members into a tiny box and then turn them into a crew book, essentially, which will most likely have free and also paid options to convert, if I had to guess. What I see them doing, though, is most likely the next time we see them do a crew update, they'll probably come out with, they'll probably come out with this next, because this is the easier thing for them to introduce, and it'll be better received from players. And then maybe, say if that comes out in the summer, maybe by like the fall or like very early next year at the latest, maybe then the final thing they do is like adding in and changing crew skills, or adding some new ones in and doing the actual crew skill thing at the very end instead of the beginning. I think that'll go over better, and hopefully Wargaming will kind of reassess some of the changes that they're doing with like crew experience for each perk and stuff like that, to address, the issues that the players have with it. Otherwise, so Japanese TDs are still coming, if anyone forgot about them. Onslaught's coming back for competitive players, which will be nice. Hopefully they add some more rewards to it, because the rewards that they had basically listed for Onslaught were really light. WOT Plus, I'll get to that in a second. Battle Pass collection, essentially they're giving more tokens out if you complete all 3 parts of the Battle Pass this year. And essentially, instead of just picking and choosing, you'll be able to get extra tokens essentially for completing everything, which, I'm fine with this type of monetization, rather than the monetization that's kind of led us to all these videos. Like stuff like this, it just basically, you get more stuff if you play the game more. Awesome. Garage slots for credits. A lot of people are excited for this. I still wish that they would keep some gold option to pay for garage slots, just because the credit option of 250,000 credits is really high for new players, and especially free-to-play players. Where yes, it gives them an option to get them without spending gold. However, removing that gold option, I feel like is it's more bad than good, because 250,000 credits is a lot. It's a lot of credits, if you're going to be collecting a lot of tanks. But really, the main thing I'm still concerned about, which hasn't really been talked about as much, so even though, I've gone over, like, I'm happy with what Wargaming's, come out with, the main thing I'm still concerned about is, WOT Plus, where What you're getting with this is, they're not removing the extra excluded map, which will definitely help people, say, 3-marking tanks and playing specific tanks that are very, like, they have a specific role, because you're going to be able to ban now 3 instead of 2 maps. So for something like super heavies, you can ban things like Prokofka, Malinovka, stuff like that, much more effectively, plus an additional map over that. So it does give WOT Plus members an advantage, in the long run. The Gold Reserve, it's nothing bad. Free equipment demounting won't apply to bond equipment anymore. Great. It also doesn't work on experimental equipment, which the experimental equipment's still basically looming, like it's in the back of my mind at all times, because Wargaming hasn't told us yet how they're going to monetize that. I think that'll be the next update. Because we haven't seen it in the battle pass or any events or anything up to this point, where I'm assuming components and equipment will be monetized in some way. So hopefully this negative pushback on 1.20.1 will affect what they do with experimental equipment, because it not being included in WOT Plus as well, that they're going to do something with this to where I hope it isn't bad and pay to win. Passively training crew members, that's something to where it's definitely an advantage for WOT Plus, but not game breaking. But the big thing that still concerns me is this, like, exclusive rental vehicle for WOT Plus members. Like, if you would have told anybody, say in 2022 or 2021 or whatever, that in 2023 World of Tanks would be at a point where you have to pay them $9 a month to basically be able to play a premium tank that you don't own and is just a rental, and if you stop paying them $9 a month, they take it away and you can't play it anymore. That itself, like, this didn't receive as much focus, and like it is going into where the way that they worded this, like exclusive rental vehicle, and they're advertising this as like it's exclusive to WOT Plus. Like, I doubt any. So the TS-54, and in my opinion, they're going to be adding additional tanks to this in the long run to basically keep people like an incentive, kind of like a, like a game pass, like where you essentially pay a subscription, you get a bunch of stuff. I see them adding multiple tanks into this in the long run, where from the way that they worded this and knowing how Wargaming's done things in the past, I doubt that they're going to essentially bring any WOT Plus tanks that are exclusive to WOT Plus to being able to buy it like for gold or in an auction or something. I guess the only caveat with that is maybe they would release a version that doesn't accommodate any crew member. Basically it works with medium, TD, light tank, any crew members for an American crew. Maybe they would do that, but the way that they worded this, to me, this is still like, now that they kind of fixed the bond demounting and delayed the crew, new crew perks, and the revising the old ones and making everything essentially pay to win for the crew, this is the #1 thing which should concern players, because it's just going to start with this to begin with. But the way it's worded, like I see them essentially adding to this in the future, because they want to keep people hooked. And the other things, while is great and all, I feel like this will be the main selling feature for WOT Plus in the long run. You get exclusive tanks that you can't get elsewhere, essentially. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just fear mongering and I'm completely off here. But literally looking at Wargaming not selling tanks in a premium shop directly, very rarely. I don't remember the last time they sold a tank in a premium shop, like a new release for the first time. It's always been behind like a limited battle pass, loot boxes, special event, the armory, essentially black market stuff. They don't sell tanks directly to you anymore, to where this looks like, they're essentially getting into the, we're renting tanks for you $9 a month, pay up essentially. Which to me is terrifying, because, World of Tanks, you're ready if you take a break. You lose your premium time you already have, but now, you're paying $9 to lock yourself in for 30 days at a time, or recurring. But in any event, all in all, thank you for watching this video and watching me ramble. Starting to get a little long here to where I'm happy with what Wargaming essentially put out, you know, taking out the two big things the community were upset for. And I want to thank you, you know, if you're still listening, and anybody that's watching, for essentially putting, you know, your time and money where you're, you know, essentially where your words are, to where a lot of players are always like, they like to complain about Wargaming. Wargaming is never going to make everybody happy. There's all different kinds of players. But this update, and like when they are really off on something, us as players, you know, there is no game without us. The where thank you, you know, essentially for, you know, basically forcing Wargaming to open their eyes and like, maybe we're the bad guys here. So, you know, thanks again, and let me know in the comments, you know, essentially, is this enough for you to kind of be positive about the game again? I'm definitely still concerned about what they are planning in the future, you know, whether it's more crew changes, or also essentially, you know, with upcoming stuff like experimental equipment and, you know, so on and so forth. But this definitely has me back in the boat of, I'm going to still play the game. I still like the game, like gameplay and everything, to where, you know, essentially Wargaming just needs to not get in their way and, you know, destroy themselves. Thanks again, and have a great day, and thank you for watching this video. I hope to hear you in hear from you in the comment section. Thanks. Bye.